Welcome to Edge of Intelligence, where we explore how leaders blend strategy and systems to push transformation forward. I'm Carl Owen, your host and Fractional CIO, AI advisor at Proteligen. Today, I'm honored to host Dean Gartelos, who runs WCS Tech and OTG Consulting, firms that live in the intersection of infrastructure, managed services, and digital transformation. Dean has deep experience building scalable tech backbones, helping clients modernize legacy systems, and bridging strategy to execution. Dean, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Glad to have you. To start things off, tell me about your journey. How did you arrive where you are today with WCS Tech and OTG? And what core gap in the IT consulting space were you striving to fill?
Yeah, so I spent almost 18 years with the phone company. I literally started out of college as a temp and grew up through the organization. By the time I left, I ran part of the pricing organization with responsibility for public sector. Have a lot of rich experience with the government, both federal and state and municipal, as well as education. And, had an opportunity to make a change and thought I wanted to catch on with another organization and kind of grow a pricing organization, right? It's a graduating company. And somewhere in the middle, I had a colleague reach out and say, "Hey, I know you're taking some time off. Have you ever thought about doing a consulting? I've got a client probably could use some help." And I thought, well, okay, I've got some time, and kind of got engaged there and thought, okay, that was kind of cool. And had somebody else, or another colleague reach out and say similar thing and said, "Oh, by the way, do you know Jeffrey Pearl? I think you guys should meet at OTG Consulting." And shortly thereafter, Western Skies Consulting was born. WSC Tech is Western Skies Technology, Western Skies Consulting Tech. And that is my technology consulting endeavor, powered by OTG. I'm actually I'm a senior partner at OTG and part of the lead team. And we help our clients purchase their technology, right? We're very rich in experience. OTG is made up of executives that used to run these service providers and carriers. And we recognize that the gap in the market really is somebody that's a client advocate to work through that journey with them. Because when most organizations, especially kind of medium-sized organizations, have a technology need, somebody gets voluntold to do it. They call an existing provider, they ask Google, they click to chat or whatever it is they do, and they end up at the end of those conversations as a salesperson. And that salesperson has an agenda, and that agenda is to get that customer to buy what they sell at the highest price they're willing to pay for it. And if the client needs a red square and the provider has a pink diamond, they're going to try to bend that diamond and reflect light as best they can to make it look like a red square, and they get a deal done, and then they gone, and service delivery starts. And lo and behold, there's not this match of what the company provides to what the client needs. And the very best service delivery folks will use that as a bonding experience with the client. Say, "Gosh, those sales guys, but we're going to take great care of you and we're going to make it right," and off they go. Well, that is all because a salesperson takes a vendor capability view of a client. And we just take that and flip it the other way around. We take a client requirement view of the market, distill all of those options down only to those that are the right fit, and then help curate that experience for our clients, silence the noise, and compete them against each other. And we get them to sell at the lowest price they're willing to sell at. And so because I don't have a quota, there's no TIBR that I'm trying to manage. In the market range, and depending on the technology, is what, 10 to 30%. Clients typically experience 10 to 30% savings. Right? There's no magic there.
Wow.
It's just a bit of logic, and it's built into the way we do things. You always hear companies say things like, "We will not lose on price for business that's good for us." Well, we just help them test that theory.
That's
So
cool.
that's the gap that we fill. And I've learned that we save a lot of time for clients. I can do something in a matter of days or a week or weeks that typically takes them months to achieve. Plus, I never go away like a salesperson. Salespersons, they're on to the next deal. Well, I'm always there. We expect our service providers to do a great job in service delivery. But if they don't, I'm always there in parallel. And I've got a BAP phone to the leadership of these organizations. So if there is an issue, I have a way to engage and support. Now, I haven't had to use that BAT phone. It's still single digit number of times, more than one hand now. It's been 8 years, but single digit. And it's always to great effect because unlike their sales organization, who will forever bring them business, they know that if they do not take care of our clients, we will not bring them additional business.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Pretty straightforward.
When I talk to tech leaders, I often hear that the harder part isn't the tech, it's aligning people expectations and reliable service delivery. Sounds like you
That's
guys are
right.
all over that.
That's right. And really, it is about getting an understanding of what the requirements are and what the desired business outcome is. I like to talk about outcomes, right? I talk about um, problem solving. I'm not really in things for a transaction. You don't hear me meet a customer and start talking about this bit of tech or that. Somebody's brought to me that has an issue that somebody referred them to me. They say, you got to go talk to Dean, and WSC will get you squared away. And what happens is everything working as well as you'd like, or do you have a project that's in flight or coming up? Where can I assist? I'm a problem solver by nature. And so it really is about getting that business outcome that's desired because the technology, I'm agnostic from that standpoint. I don't care if it's a voice thing or a data thing or a security or a solution or a mobility, whatever is the client needs, I meet them where they are and just optimize that solution and their operations and minimize their costs.
What are the types of clients or problems that you're drawn to at WCT?
Yeah, so it's a bit of everything. Every vertical and every size organization needs technology. So, most common, large organizations that have some legacy systems, it's always that march to the cloud. And how do you responsibly do that? And without going too far, because that can be a thing. For smaller organizations, it's about growing the right way, and sometimes it's budget expansion, not always about saving money, but doing so in a responsible way to really facilitate the growth that they're experiencing and targeting. And so lately, everybody wants to talk about AI, and that's a good thing, and they should. If your organization is not have an AI strategy or looking at ways it can augment your capabilities, you're behind, right? Everybody and their brother has an AI solution, has a flavor of some sort, and what does that mean? Well, that's where I come in. I'm agnostic from a solution standpoint. You heard this thing about AI. What is your business? What is it you're trying to optimize? How could we leverage AI to achieve those outcomes? Not let's get an agentic AI solution in place, or let's get our RPO solution in place to get eyes off of emails. Those might be things we do. Maybe it's about orchestration of disparate systems into an AI driven dashboard, right? There's lots of things and ways this should be addressed, and thoughtfully so, because it's not if you're going to need it. And honestly, if you think the cost of AI is too high, the cost of not doing it is much
Right.
higher the right way.
I talked about this before, but
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons I started this is that I've got people, some of my clients, are wanting to jump into AI without even realizing what problem they're trying to solve,
Right.
or whether their data is such that they
Well,
can do that.
and
Or
sometimes it's as simple as a board member went to a symposium and came back and told the C-suite, "You guys got to get this," and they're like, "Okay, I'll do the AI." And it's what does that mean? When somebody comes to me and says, "I really need to look at AI," and I say, "Okay, great. What does that mean to you? What do you want? What are we trying to optimize? What do your operations look like today?" And go through some of that discovery discussion, and where appropriate, bring in an AI expert. My expertise is not in any one particular bit of technology. It really is knowing which experts to pull in to each situation to my client's benefit.
yeah, exactly. So what differentiates your approach from standard managed service providers or consulting firms?
Yeah. So, I'm not an MSP. I work with a lot of MSPs, both as solution providers and also they bring me in to support things to paint around their capabilities. But there's a lot of folks in this space that do what I do. Here's your 50,000 or 100,000 or $20,000 scope of work for me to come in and take a look at your environment and tell you what you need. And then we're going to come in and evaluate and save you a boatload of money. We're going to take 50% of your savings. You're welcome. Well, the reality is both those folks are typically getting paid the same way that I am, which is by the service provider. So the wise men say have an irresistible offer. And feel like that irresistible offer is we will apply this expertise that we have, the resources at our disposal, our relationships in our market to our client's benefit at no cost to our client because we're compensated by the service providers. And so that is a little bit unique. First, it removes a little bit of a barrier to entry. Some companies still like to hug paper and they want an LOA or they want an SOW or something to work with. But the reality is, I don't require paperwork with a client to engage because ultimately they're going to sign a service agreement with whichever service provider is going to meet that need. And I already have a relationship with all of them. So administratively, it's very light engagement for any client for me to work with. And it's a simplified process. I was brought in at a very late stage with one of my clients, and and they were in the middle of trying to consolidate all of their connectivity. And the cable company was helping them do that in and out of cable territory, which, if you know anything about kind of that space, boy, out of territory for cable companies is pretty tricky.
Mm-hmm.
But they convinced this client they're going to be great at it. And I said, hey, I'd like to take a look. And they said, well, we're pretty far down the road, but I'll let you take a look. And we've been working on this for 9 months. We were just about to sign. Great, just let me go do my thing. And so I came back, I think to their great surprise, with about 15% savings from somebody that was leveraging cable assets where it made sense, but also aggregating others where it made sense. And they were just kind of like, what do I saw all the things go down. I just told my CEO we're done and these are the right guys. How do I go back to him after 9 months? Listen, you don't have to do anything. Okay. Now I'm not going to get paid anything because you're going to go do this with this other guy, but you need to go to them and say, you need to come down another 10%.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I've been beaten over the head. Well, I just saved you 15%. And sure enough, they gave him another 10%. And their implementation did all the things that I expected it would do. But anyway, but the fact is, right, in a matter of about a week, I was able to get something that took them 9 months to sort through. And this was for 270 locations across the US. And so that's what makes me different. And I didn't charge them anything and I didn't get anything there, but that's what makes me different. I didn't spend this month negotiating scope of work. I didn't have to get through all the how are you going to pay me and let's document your current costs so I can calculate savings so you can get my fee and all that stuff. I'm a very light engagement.
Well, in your experience, what are the most common misconceptions that your clients have about IT or digital transformation before they engage you?
Is the complexity. I'm not saying it's not complex and complicated, but I think too many technologists operate with the technology mystique that, and they, their value is in knowing answers that people need them for. And so it can be daunting, especially with access to all the information that's available today via these little devices. There's access to all of man's knowledge, and so it can be overwhelming. But it doesn't have to be so complicated it can't be consumed. That's where I come in. I simplify some of those things because when you talk to business leaders about outcomes that they want, they're really good at describing those. And well, what are these requirements? I said, well, we're going to work through that. But if we don't know what we're trying to solve, then I can't go find the answer for you. And so that is one of the things that I find just overcomplicating in their own mind, or because somebody is overcomplicated for them because they're trying to preserve a relationship or a role or a space or a job or something.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. One of the challenges I see with some of my clients is the balance between strategy and operations, right? Anybody can go to ChatGPT and come up with a strategy today. How do you balance the tension between being that trusted advisor or strategist and operations?
Yeah, it's part art, it is part science, and I think it is about having the right level of engagement with the organization to help them. I tell clients, I'm not going to create a sense of urgency for you, with some exceptions. I can talk about those exceptions where there's truly an operational risk or a security risk or something, but I'm not going to create a sense of urgency. I'd like to know your business, know what your path and your timeline looks like, what your horizon is, what is your technology strategy. Oh, you don't have one? Maybe we should create one from where you are that aligns with your business strategy. Those two things go hand in hand. And so it's getting to know that and then helping facilitate whatever that path is that they have. Now, if they want some help defining it, somebody told me it's going to take me 9 months to migrate my call center. Well, okay, I don't think so. I mean, it certainly can take that long, but it doesn't have to take that long, depending on what the environment is that we're talking about trying to do. And so it's a bit of education and a bit of collaboration to really truly find the path for each individual client. I don't mean to be too, oh, well, it depends, but it kind of does.
Yeah. Well, in many firms, the first taste of automation or AI comes from small internal processes. That's if they even understand their processes or have them defined.
That's right.
Around the help desk, monitoring, or alerts. But scaling that to client service or value creation is often the harder leap. I want to understand where you are in that transition. So, to date, what automation, AI, or smart tooling have you adopted internally for ticket tree or helped your clients adopt? Maybe ticket triage,
Sure.
infrastructure monitoring, chatbots.
There's a few different tools. There's some agentic solutions that are really great at handling that triage, that you can teach, whether it's a pizza parlor or a staffing firm or IT firm that has people calling in. That's one way that I see things and have seen things kind of play out. I think there's great gains to be made from an accounts receivable and account payable standpoint with some of the tools that are available now to really streamline that process. So I don't know if that's really what you were getting at, but does that help, or ask me again? I'm happy to clarify.
Well, let's kind of take it to the next step, really. So,
Okay.
what processes of your clients are you seeing in the service delivery pipeline that
No,
are most ripe for automation or augmentation?
thank you. Sorry. So it is literally that first step. Um, you know, I have a client that their IT team was manually resetting passwords, and that's nutty. That should never take cycles for an IT team in today's environment.
Mhm.
So that's an example. I think I've got a staffing client, first pass of review of qualification of people that are interested in staffing. Do you have these, or all the different requirements there? Those are fantastic ways to leverage AI or other technology to get humans out of that process to collect information and either refer to a human when it's needed or just take care of it entirely and offload it entirely. Those are a couple of examples that I've seen so far.
Well, what prerequisites have you found essential for the adoption of AI? And what I mean by that is um, data hygiene, for example, instrumentation, logging, governance.
Yeah,
What
I
comes to
think
mind?
yeah, I think all of those things play in. Before you are able to automate, before you're able to integrate an AI type solution, you really do have to have awareness of what are your processes, what data do you have, how clean is it? You talk about data hygiene, right? And what dashboards do you have or would you like? Those are all facets of trying to make those decisions. I think the noisier your environment, the less effective any automation will be. So sometimes this project and process is a little bit of process clarity as much as it is automation technology.
Yep. Well, have you encountered any resistance or friction when introducing automation from
For
either
sure.
your clients, the staff, operations, and how did you navigate through that?
Up and down. I think change can be hard and usually is for people and organizations. And like any change, I think it's about always through education and insight. And some people will just never be happy no matter, because sometimes that automation is taking away a task that they were telling their boss took them 20 hours a week, which maybe was a 1 hour a week activity that didn't need to be a human activity. So there's some things there that can be hard. But it really is about education and aligning and helping management communicate and align outcomes and desired outcomes with why we're doing things. I think when you can get to why for an organization and help communicate that why up and down the line, then adoption becomes clear. I think most often people get too hung up on implementing a tool without highlighting what the outcome is, the desired outcome and the benefit of that tool is going to be. So I do some coaching through the process. And some leaders, they have it inherently, it's intrinsic to their way they go. Some, well, they'll do it because I said to. Well, yeah, they probably will at some point. Or we can help define and help articulate the benefit and the perceived, and because they're going to help us realize that benefit, or they're going to help us realize, boy, we're not getting the success or the improvement that we expected. But if nobody knows what the target is, then there's no good way to report out to it. So it really is about helping communicate, and it's matching and facilitating. In healthy cultures, it's super simple. In unhealthy cultures, it's a little bit trickier, but still necessary. And sometimes I put on my coaching hat or my management hat and help people through those things.
Have you seen challenges with adoption around people fearing for the loss of their job?
Absolutely. That, though, is less common lately than people going, oh my God, I don't have to do a password reset ever again. Sometimes they're not thrilled about doing that. They just know it needs to get done. Or, God, now I don't have to talk to 70 people to fill these 5 positions because that filtering and that qualification checks can be done on an automated basis. So most often it's viewed as help. Usually it's not the end users that struggle, it's the middle management that has done a good job, maybe, or a poor job, depending on your perspective, of creating enough uncertainty about what they do and how they manage,
Mm.
that once there's clarity, there's no place to hide. And the sad truth is sometimes that's a change that has to be made. But I've never come into an organization and said, boy, we're going to go find some jobs to get rid of. It really is about partnering and collaborating and really painting around what exists from a resource standpoint because typically they're just overworked.
Yeah. One of the things I always talk about is it takes away some of those mundane tasks that you don't want to do anyway
That's
and
right.
frees you up to do the things that you were hired to do to start with. So
Right.
it
I mean,
enhances your abilities and capabilities.
it does. And honestly, I am that embodied. I am that task that nobody wants to go out and figure out what's in the market to figure out what voice system we need or contact center, or who can I get connectivity from here. I do that for clients so they don't have to. I just come back and say, hey, here's your 5 options. Which one do you like? Or hey, each of those things. So, on a it's not an automated basis, it's a manual basis, but that is part of what I do is save that time. I do that legwork. So I'm a bit of a force multiplier. And I've had to use that as the example from an automation standpoint. You say you love that I go do this for you. Guess what? We just got a bunch of virtual help to go do these mundane things, so now you don't have to. And they seem to grasp that. It's about just finding the right way to communicate with whoever is struggling through the process of the situation.
Well, do you see or foresee offering AI augmented services as part of WCS's portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So Western Skies, we're truly agnostic from a solution standpoint. And so it necessarily has to be part of the portfolio because every client has a need or will have a need for it. Just like connectivity has to be a part of the portfolio because without connectivity, none of the cloud happens. And so, yeah, 100%. It's not so much about finding the right AI product to add to our portfolio. It's about bringing in the suite of products that's available in the market and then helping the client navigate which one of those or which combination of those meet the need that they have that'll yield the outcome, the desired outcome.
I think that's really important in the AI space. There's thousands and thousands of tools out there, and there's no way that someone that's not savvy can go pick the right tool for the job.
It's overwhelming. And now I will say this, there's not much of what I do that a good executive couldn't do on their own, but it's about time and time value, right? They have their day job. So it's not that they're not smart enough to navigate or figure out where to go or how to assess and any of those things. It's a time function, right? Back to I'm that force multiplier. So the time they spend is in a decision capacity, not in a fact finding capacity. And so that's back to I do my best not to create this technology mystique. I think it's not magical. It's just everybody's got a role and a function, and I help expedite some of these things and simplify them for clients.
Well, as your business scales, operational consistency, reliability, and repeatability become stress points. So even
Mhm.
if a firm is tech savvy, bottlenecks emerge, there are process handoffs that you have to deal with, scaling overhead, tool sprawl. Let's kind of explore that for a bit. What operational or capacity challenges do you face currently as you grow?
So my practice entirely is around these individual customer engagements. So yes, there's only one dean and I can't be everywhere, but I do have a bench of folks that can help support as needed. And so I scale pretty well because I don't have to do any of it. So as I reach my capacity at times, it expands, contracts through wherever stages of customer needs are. Um, maybe instead of being on with a demonstration for an hour, I'll be there at the outset of it, right? And follow up separately instead of spending that specific time. So I scale pretty well that way. I become much more mindful of which meetings I take on, things of that nature, right? Busier times, less time for new introductions as people reach out. As the cycle slows down, more time for those kinds of conversations. And so that's from my standpoint, my business isn't a great example of where kind of those bottlenecks get solved by technology. I will say that I leverage technology through the processes I use in terms of reaching out, communicating with service providers and assessing things. But those are tools that are kind of state of the art, state of the industry, more than some magic sauce that I found to bring to the table.
Well, so what are some of the manual or semi-manual processes that you feel are friction points with your clients? Let's kind of focus
Yeah.
on that for a minute.
Really, we touched about on a few of them. I won't revisit those, the
Yeah.
passwords or the filtering of kind of prospects or clients. But anything that is kind of that the validation of data, time spent trying to authenticate things, whether that's access to an account for billing purposes, or whether that's access for medical records. But all of those little bits of interactions with end users that requires authentication or that requires assessment or evaluation or something that can be rules based, those things, in my opinion, are ripe for automation. I think accounts payable and accounts receivable are a no-brainer. I think the systems and the data is available, and in a good environment and ecosystem, it's readily available. In one that's less so, there can be ways to bring the data out of each of the systems so they can communicate, so you can automate and facilitate some interactions that way. But those kind of rudimentary tasks are all ripe for that sort of any sort of operator, whether that's AI or robotic process automation, not really smart thinking, but just evaluating and sending. There's different ways that looks, but those are the things to me they're just no brainers.
It makes sense. Well, how much of your service delivery today is customized per client versus standardized?
That's a interesting question, and I would answer it this way: 100% of it is customized per client, and the reason I answer it that way is none of my clients are the same. And so, where one client might have this provider for a voice solution and this provider for their network and another one for their managed services, it'll be a different selection for those functionalities for a different client, depending on their maybe their vertical or their size or their geographic distribution. And so I am not a kind of a cookie cutter solution purveyor, right? One of the things that maybe sets us apart from some of my peers is some of these organizations, for good reason, have stood up service delivery organizations that handle ticketing, that interact with these vendors on a client's behalf. And the reason we intentionally decided not to do so is as soon as you have an integration with somebody or multiple somebodies, you start to put your finger on the scale for what your client should choose, because it's easier for you to support than maybe the benefit of a capability from a different provider to the client. And so I rely on our service provider service delivery, because shouldn't I? If I'm going to bring him to a client, and if I can't rely on service delivery, maybe they ought not be in front of my clients as an option. And so that's another kind of factor in the way that I think about how not just we differentiate, but why we customize to each client engagement. Does that make sense?
It does, but it also brings up kind of a risk, an inherent risk in your model. So now you propose a service and you're relying on that service provider to deliver that service for you. So how do you manage through that process? What are some of the key metrics that you track, and where do you feel like you're most exposed in that area? And then how do you address that?
Interesting perspective. I've never thought of it that way in terms of somebody's delivering for me. I've really always thought of it as they're delivering to me as I sit on the client side of the table. And yeah, is it always been a home run? Am I batting 1,000? No. I think business happens. Service providers don't always do what they say, or it doesn't always show up the way they intended. And that's where my role as that kind of link between a client and a service provider really comes into play. And it's only happened on a catastrophic basis once, i.e., client truly was unhappy, service provider truly wasn't getting the job done, and a change had to be made before the contract was up. And it was like, enough is enough, right? So I'm involved in that. I was involved in it throughout the process. And we identified a new provider. And the transition call to that new provider was exceedingly efficient. Outgoing provider brought everything to the table they needed, new service provider and the client both called me separately afterwards. They're like, well, the new service provider's like, why are they leaving these guys? They seem to be on top of it. And the client said, well, if it had been like this, we wouldn't have had issues. And I'm like, guys, that was 100% for my benefit. They know this deal is done, but if they don't help and show that they can be good and be productive on the transition, I will never bring them again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't found cause to bring them to another client because they were really good and they grew and became not very good. And so I'm waiting for the dust to settle a little bit as they plateau at kind of the next tier of their size to see if they can be a viable option for my clients. But that's the type of risk I think you're identifying. And that's how I deal with it. And that's why I remain engaged the way that I do.
Perfect. Well, when you build infrastructure first firms, you see patterns others don't. platform leverage, recurring models, edge services. So let's imagine the next chapter for your firm. So
Mhm.
over the next 3 to 5 years, how do you want WCS to evolve? Is it higher level consulting, platform plays, niche specialization, AI specialization?
I think we'll continue to support however and wherever a client's need is, and we will always follow the market. Um, the way we access the market on our clients' behalf allows us to be at the leading edge and at the laggard position. And so I believe you'll see Western Skies and others more and more lean into that enabled operational capability. I think for the impact that the internet had on industry, and I mean all industry, AI is going to be probably 10x that. And I really don't think that's hyperbole. It is that dynamic of an influence in all industry, potentially. And so it would be foolhardy to not think that will be a growing piece of how we help clients. But there will be a curve on that as well, because as the players take shape and the myriad of AI solutions and the point solutions and things that are there, I think every other bit of technology that's been introduced and evolved in the market will see consolidation, or we'll see expansion of capability that renders, let's have thousands of AI options to down to hundreds or whatever. Right. So that is absolutely a piece of it. I think you'll see us less involved in legacy infrastructural things, but because there'll be fewer of those legacy things remaining. Right now, if you can imagine, people still have copper solutions in place. And we help all the time with that. And we need to. And if you have copper and you have one FBs and you have fire and security lines or whatever it is, come find me, because that's an operational risk for you right now, just on the sunset given by the carriers for those facilities. But those are at some point going to be gone in their entirety. The myriad of voice solutions that are out in the market, those are going to continue to consolidate down. I will see Teams be the predominant player. I think we'll see layered solutions on top of that environment for contact centers and the things that they need to be, but you won't have these thousands of VoIP providers that exist today. I think that'll continue to consolidate down. So we will continue to follow the market, but we'll be both at the front end of the market, watching what's happening, bringing what's happening where appropriate, and also bringing up the rear of the market and helping people modernize even when they're laggards and want to be laggards.
Well, how do you see your clients' expectations shifting with AI and automation? Do you see them demanding smarter service, faster resolution, predictive support? I mean, what are you seeing out there?
I've seen a mix of, well, doesn't AI just solve this? Why isn't it done yet? Kind of a thing. And I've seen a bit of, wow, I didn't know it could do that. You give a demo or you let somebody call in and chat with an AI agent and you let them have that conversation. Wow, I didn't realize it could be this good. And so there's a bit of wonderment, and there's also some false expectation on, I thought this would be simple. Well, you have to think about what's feeding that AI and how do you safeguard your data and leverage AI to help facilitate the outcomes that you're looking for, versus opening up your environment to the, I won't say public, but to a very broad kind of accessible group in the name of leveraging AI. I've kind of seen all across the spread. There's a bit of fear around AI relative to all the bad things that it could be. I do my best to never let fear drive. But I think there's an awareness of risk that everybody ought to have relative to not just AI, but every bit of technology that is available and evolving.
Well, as all these things grow, there's obviously constraints that come with it. So, from your client's perspective, what constraints are you watching? Are they talent, capital, regulatory spend that might shape how far or how fast your clients can scale?
Yeah, I think there's enough uncertainty right now from an economic standpoint, that I think they want to be very sure before investing in certain things, certain new evolving things. But at the same time, because of those economic concerns, they're looking for optimization and recognize there might be some investment required to achieve some of those optimization and efficiencies. And so, but to me, it's a little bit of both of those sides of that coin from an economic standpoint. I think resource is also an interesting thing right now, finding resources. I'm a very big fan of an outsourced model for various things, not all things. I think the consumption based model is most appropriate for medium sized business because you can leverage talent that you might not otherwise afford. And, there's a lot of good reasons to do that. Amongst them, suddenly you're paying for a capability, and that provider has to provide that capability regardless of which staff they have in place. So if staffing becomes their issue. Now they know that, and they've got such a big, broad base, they have some fault tolerance built in. And so you, as a client, are the beneficiary of that fault tolerance of some of these organizations and outsourcing endeavors. So does that kind of get at what you were asking? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, this is kind of an off the wall question, but if you
sure.
could deploy one new line of business tomorrow using AI tools with no constraints, what would it be?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I think I'm a hockey dad. Okay, so goalie mask there. Those are actually lacrosse goalie masks. He's retired from lacrosse, thank God. A lacrosse goalie's a whole different animal. He'd come out poking on it anyway. So there's a few tools available for broadcasting and showing games. I do some commentary and broadcast games. I would love to stick an AI capability on those kind of live broadcasts from a stat standpoint, like you see the NHL do. Now they do it with sensors and things in jerseys to get speed players, but boy, I'd love to unleash that capability on youth hockey and let people get, a sense of, how fast does this squirt forward go up the side, right up the wing, or how many shots, were on net, how many shot attempts were there that didn't get on net or were blocked, and just there's no reason that you couldn't leverage some of those capabilities for youth sports. I think it'd be a fun and neat thing, and I'm sure it could be put to poor use as well. But I like that. Maybe that'd be the thing.
Well, if you were advising a mid-sized business leader just beginning their AI or digital transformation journey, what
Mhm.
one piece of advice would you share?
I talk about fear, and I think people are motivated by two things: fear and love. And love manifests itself in different ways in business, usually through knowledge, through optimism, through education, through things. And I would say, as you look at these things, try to approach them without fear, but with certainty that you're in the position as a leader for a reason. You've been trusted to make good decisions. Use that capability that you have to bring in experts to help you assess and listen to those experts. It doesn't mean blindly listen, but ask questions, but leverage resources around you. Don't go it alone. There's folks out there in the market that are like me, that are like you, there's others in the market. It doesn't have to be one of the two of us, right? But leverage folks that spend their time in these places so you don't have that large runway of knowledge, of acquisition of knowledge. Look for the good, because I think you catch what you fish for.
That's very insightful. Well, Dean, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate your candor, your mix of technical insight and service orientation, and your vision for scaling smart infrastructure. For our listeners, if you're managing IT infrastructure or scaling tech teams, this is a conversation worth listening to. Dean's journey reminds us that real transformation lives between the lines of service, architecture, and execution. If you'd like help bridging strategy to automation, building data foundations, or shaping an AI roadmap, that's what we do at Proteligen. Feel free to reach out. Till next time, ask better questions, build smarter systems, and stay on the edge of intelligence. Dean, thank you.
Hey, thank you. And, if it's okay, I'd love to say for folks, you can find me at succeedwithdean.com. I'd be happy
Absolutely.
to be a resource for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.